All right. All right, gentlemen. Happy Wednesday morning. We're a day late on the recap, but that's all right. Back in the Box Productions is here with the OMC show. I am Mike, the original MC, and we're going to do a little week 2 wrap up for the Hop and talk about some results and some in what was a wild week, a painful week, a lot of injuries. We'll touch on some of that. But we are rocking and rolling. We have the haves and the have-nots, the 2-0s, the 0-2s. We'll get into all that. So lots to talk about. Let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to go ahead and chop it up. So, as I typically do, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so you all can see what I'm looking at. And when we get here, we see that we're on my matchup with Miamichi, Best Pizza in Florida, and Vinny Grande. So, truth be told, coming into this particular game, I felt that it looked fairly even, considering all things considered. He has some very, very dangerous players on his team. And then after Thursday night with Devonta Smith putting up 34 points, I felt like, I was probably going to take the loss this week, but it wasn't, it didn't happen. Now, if you told me that he was going to have 26 points from McCaffrey, 34 points from Devonta Smith, and 34 points from Mike Evans, is there really a reasonable expectation that I would actually win this game? And yet I did, and ended up with a nice 35-point victory. So let's start on Vinny's side. All right, as we talked about, so this is what I would call sort of an uneven performance. We had a couple of top games, but then we had, top performances, and then we also had, some less than stellar, underwhelming performances, and there is no bigger than Trevor Lawrence. I have touted Jacksonville as a Super Bowl contender this year. They came out and looked terrible versus Kansas City, absolutely horrible. Trevor Lawrence, 4 points on the day. You can't have that in a game that's supposed to be a shootout. If you want to call yourself an elite number 1 quarterback, a performance like this isn't going to work. So 4 points there. McCaffrey, unbelievable game. But you know what? Here's the thing with McCaffrey. I don't know if you guys watched this. He started out, he had like a 60-yard run or something in the beginning of the game. And he ended up with, if you take that run out of it, a regular sort of pedestrian game. Like, I would have thought if they kept with him and sort of, let him sort of run the game, man, but, he might have put up, 40 or 50 points on this day. So I was, really concerned that it was going to get out of hand with the way that game started. 26 points is a nice number. I felt that there was some points left on the table. Josh Jacobs. Now, guys, this is interesting. So I had talked about doing a little NFL roundtable, and I can tell you that this is one of the topics that I was going to touch on. So Josh Jacobs, I don't have the stat in front of me. Josh Jacobs had negative rushing yards on the game in this game versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, yes, he still had 10 points because he did some receiving work, which is great, and that's one of the benefits of the PPR. But Josh Jacobs is absolutely living up to what I said I was afraid of with all those carries in the year before. This is a man that in any league that I'm in this year I stayed away from, and this is exactly why. How do you have negative rushing yards on the game? Now, some will say, well, he started out a little slower last year and it really came out. I'm not sure that's going to happen this year. Josh Jacobs, 10 points, not great. Jalen Waddle to my Tyreek Hill, all right, 12 points versus New England. Not terrible. New England is, usually a pretty stout defense, and the pass game is what burns people against Miami. And, the evil genius Bill Belichick figures out a way to really temper that. 12 points isn't, terrible, though. Devonta Smith with a great Thursday night, 34 points. Kittle with 6. Javonte Williams with 7. Here's another one. Javonte Williams, Denver. In the first drive of the game for Denver, he looked amazing. He had 2 really good runs, and I thought he was in for a big day. And he ended up getting 40 yards rushing on the day. It was very strange what happened. He started out fantastic and then just dropped off. I'm not sure what happened there. Denver ended up losing that game in a lot of points scored, but Javonte Williams wasn't really part of the plan. Mike Evans with 34 points. Giants, man, amazing that they won the game versus Arizona, but -4 points for the defense is never going to get it done for you. 7 for your kicker, 5 for your coach. Add it all up, you have 141 points. Now let's look at the bench real quick, just to see if anything sticks out. Christian Kirk put up 27 points versus Kansas City, so that was on the bench. Jaguars D, 14 points. And then we had Jordan Love with 25. Jordan Love is becoming a nice little player. I think he's going to be one of those sort of middle-of-the-road quarterbacks. I don't think they're going to be an outstanding offense, but he looked good at the end of last year, and he's looking pretty good so far this year. But no way in a million years you could have expected to put Jordan Love in over Trevor Lawrence when they're playing Kansas City. Now, on my side of the equation, so truth be told, guys, this is actually what I want to see when I look at my team. I want to look down the column and I want to see production from everywhere. I didn't have any amazing games, amazing point totals from any of the players, but everybody contributed, and that is the sign of a deep and a solid team, right? You don't want to necessarily be too top heavy. Josh Allen, 26 points, very pedestrian for Josh Allen. Tony Pollard, 19, right on the projected number versus a really, really good Jets defense who just didn't play well that game. Kenneth Walker had 18 points on the back of some touchdowns, didn't have a high rushing total. Tyreek Hill, 15 points. He scored 50-plus last week, but again, against New England, I'll take 15 points. Again, low yardage total, not a lot of catches, but did score. Mike Williams, 16 points. Now, Mike Williams had a lot of catches and yards and no touchdowns, but see the balance there? Tremendous. Mark Andrews coming back, first game of the year, scores a touchdown, 15 points. Tyler Lockett, 25 points. Tyler Lockett was amazing on this game. Right, he came in a little banged up, but he scored the game winner in overtime. Just had a great game, and he's a receiver that goes largely under the radar. 3 points from Joshua Kelly. So let me tell you guys a real quick story on this. So as you know, I picked up Joshua Kelly last week, and that's sort of what precipitated my trade for Austin Ekeler, who I'm not able to use yet, and no telling when that's going to happen. So in this game, I looked at Joshua Kelly and I said, they're playing Tennessee. I know their run defense is like the best in the league, but I was expecting that he would get some, routes run. But I really did consider putting Marquise Brown in for him against the Jets because I thought that might be a higher scoring game. Joshua Kelly got 3 points. Marquise Brown got 17. So that's an area where I sort of overthink, and I was sort of drawn in by the allure of the extra running back, and that was a mistake. But on the flip side, I had Buccaneers defense get me 26. Buccaneers defense wasn't even on my team as of like 11 o'clock that morning. I ended up, once Ekeler was officially out, I put him in IR. I snapped up Tampa Bay defense, and I threw them in there. 26 points. Ravens would have gotten me 3. That's a 23-point difference. So you can see how some of those last-minute moves, they can come back to bite you, but they can also do wonders for you. So 26 points from a defense is fantastic. And actually, if you look at it, Bucs defense tied for the highest point total on the team with my quarterback, Josh Allen. Marquise Brown, again, missed opportunity, 17 points. Jalen Reed, 19 on the bench. And Jared Goff, who I also picked up, 31 points. Again, never really going to play Goff over Allen, but I'm, maybe hedging a little bit on an Allen injury because of the way he plays. Add it all up, 176 points and a win, 2-0. Miamichi Hop, 1-1, and but two very solid teams with a lot of dangerous players on it. Moving on, so we have Southpaw Craig Roloff, Scooters Bush, Rick Erdlin. Now, Craig Roloff last year won the non-playoff challenge, meaning he didn't even make it to the playoffs. Won the non-playoff challenge, got to choose his draft selection today, and in the first 2 weeks of the season has been the highest scoring team in the league. With another amazing effort and 184 points, and no slouch playing against a guy who scored 150 and beaten him by 34 points. Amazing. So let's start on the Southpaw side. Justin Herbert, 28 points versus Tennessee. I think Herbert's just a professional quarterback who's probably going to finish in the top 5. James Cook, 24 points with Buffalo. A.J. Dillon underperformed with Aaron Jones sitting. A.J. Dillon is the epitome of a backup running back. He's just not really performed when he had starting duties. Double J doing Double J things, 29 points. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 19 points. That's a beautiful 1-2 punch. But it's not really 1-2, is it? Because look at the other two receivers in his lineup. CeeDee Lamb, 30 points. And Calvin Ridley, who everybody loves, only had 5 points on the day, but didn't need it because he got the production elsewhere. Dallas Goedert came out of the, came away from his 0-point performance last week to put up 8 points. Cowboys defense looking like potentially the best in the league, 22 points. Granted, they did play the lowly Giants, lowly Jets in weeks 1 and 2, but they look amazing, and Micah Parsons is just a phenom on another planet. And McPherson 6, Cowboys coach 7. Now, on the bench, check it out, guys. Raheem Mostert, 30 points. Look, I don't know, so let's see who he played in his place. James Cook and A.J. Dillon. Could have made a case that, Mostert for Dillon might have made sense here. But Dillon playing against Atlanta, Mostert for New England, I'm sure that's what went into the decision. But that's a nice point total sitting on the bench. Nothing really else here stands out. So just an all-around amazing game. 184 points, top point total in the league. And so far, leading the league in everything. Scooter's boys, Brock Purdy, 13 points versus the Rams. Purdy's another one. He's maybe a step or two above a game manager. He's not quite a game manager. He's not exactly Trent Dilfer, but he's not going to be a superstar quarterback. But he has enough weapons around him to where they could potentially bring him some high point totals throughout the year. This wasn't that game, 13 points. Derrick Henry, 18 points. I continue to be worried about him. He seems to be splitting a lot of carries in Tennessee, but he still shows that he has he has the chops, putting up 18 points. And, still someone to keep an eye on and someone that's dangerous as far as I'm concerned if my opponent has him. Najee Harris continues to underwhelm with 5 points. Got to start wondering if this is a guy you really want in your lineup. Chris Godwin, 10 points after Mike Evans had a really amazing day. Godwin, a little pedestrian. The fantasy phenom, Puka Nacua, 34 points. So here's the question. Here's the question on everybody's mind. Puka Nacua right now is playing the Cooper Kupp role. Cooper Kupp is due back in a couple of weeks. What is that going to look like? It's actually one of the most interesting NFL storylines, but also on the fantasy side. Should be really interesting, but the guy's playing lights out. I will tell you that I am one of the rare few. I don't believe what we're seeing. I think he's going to fall off. I think this is a case of being sort of an unknown player. And once the NFL, adjusts, I'm just not a believer that he's a generational talent. Prove me wrong. So far, he has. 2 weeks, setting records. Amazing. Evan Engram, 11 points. First Kansas City. Courtland Sutton, 11. Only 4 points from Algier was a very disappointing effort considering what he did week 1. Atlanta's going to be a frustrating team like that. They're going to run a lot. It's going to be tempting to put the running back in there, but you get games like this, and they won 25-24. You would have thought that game script would have, that plus the coach being the running coach, you would have thought that Algier would have been, had a better game. Steelers defense putting up a 34 spot versus Cleveland. If I'm not mistaken, I think that included 2 defensive touchdowns, which when you have a defense going and you see them score a touchdown, it really does make you feel good. Turns out to not be enough on this particular game. 5 points from Butker, 5 from your head coach. Add it all up, you get 150 points, just wasn't enough. On the bench, 12 points from Michael Thomas, 41 points from Russell Wilson versus Washington. So let's see. If you played Russell Wilson, 41, 13, that would have been an additional, 28 points, give or take? Brings you a lot closer. Makes it a loss that hurts more. But wasn't to be. Russell Wilson on the bench with a 41 spot, proving that he still has the potential to put up big games. Gus Edwards with 12 and nothing really else to speak about. And there's Cooper Kupp sitting on the bench. Could you imagine with this team if Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua become like the greatest 1-2 duo ever and he's got them both? Look out for Scooter's boys. Look out for Scooter's boys. Southpaw 2-0, leading the world in everything so far. Scooter's boys 0-2, but reinforcements are coming. Good luck to you gentlemen moving forward. Next, our chop, Brooklyn Baller. Now, I'm going to take a moment here before we get into this. And I want to stress that this is in no way a complaint or anything like that regarding the challenge that took place on the trade between myself and Mike Caraba earlier in the week, before this week's games were played, in which he traded me Austin Eckler and Jahan Dotson and got back in return Ramondre Stevenson, Nico Collins, and Jaylen Warren. And there was an instant challenge, which is fine. You looked at it and you saw Austin Eckler and you said, wait a second, something doesn't seem right there. And I get it. But I want to show you, I want to point out, just sort of in general, when you're looking at a trade, I want to point out that what happened here is exactly what the purpose of the trade was. Austin Eckler did not play this week. Okay, there's no timetable for his return. He's a dynamic player when he's in there, but he's dealing with an ankle, and that could linger. Who knows? So Austin Eckler didn't play. Jahan Dotson got like a handful of points, and he was in the single digits, so nothing to speak of there. Other MC, right? Now, his only healthy running back at the time prior to the trade was Jamal Williams, okay? Now, Jamal Williams got hurt, so he could have potentially done better. But his other guy was Aaron Jones, who was trending way towards out because of a hamstring injury, and he didn't have any other running backs to play, right? Abanikanda from the Jets, you're not going to play him, and look, he got a 0 point. So my point is that he was heading towards a week after being 0-1 to where he was going to have no running backs to play. I come to him and say, look, I have Kelly. Let's go ahead and make a deal for Eckler. We haggled back and forth. He originally asked for something, a couple of things. We sort of haggled back and forth, and then we landed on Stevenson, Nico Collins, and Jaylen Warren. Now I want to show you something here, okay? Looking at this, and we'll get into the results in a second. He won his game, by the way, and he won by 13 points, okay, with a very game R chop, which we'll touch on in a second. Ramondre Stevenson, 15 points. Nico Collins, 32 points, okay? Now, Nico Collins, you might say, well, he was drafted late and everything. I saw something in him. That's why I drafted him. And the bottom line is he's a player that everyone's excited about. And it hurt me to let him go. But I had to because of the player I was getting in return. Ramondre Stevenson is an RB1 in this league. And he catches balls out of the backfield. And against Miami, he put up 15 points, and Nico Collins put up 32. And then let's go to Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren put up 12 points. You might say, well, he's a backup running back. No, the writing's on the wall. Najee Harris is going to be out. Jaylen Warren's going to be in. He would have gotten eventually 2 starting running backs and potentially a top flight receiver for a banged up running back that he couldn't use now. And he definitely would have ended up 0-2 because look at all those points he got, and he only won by 13. This is the epitome of a trade that helps both teams because you have other MC who did something so that he doesn't drown now and still has a chance throughout the season, and there's still moves to be made. And I could afford to take the hit now because I had some other players that can carry me, and I can take the risk that Eckler is going to come back eventually this season and come back strong, and hopefully propel me to a championship from there. So it's the epitome of I could afford to wait now and hopefully get the reward later. He needed the reward now, and he's continuing to retool. That's what a trade's about, and that's why when a trade happens, you don't just look at the names, you look at the situation, and that's why I explained it the way I did. Again, I'm not mad. The challenge thing is in there for a reason, and I have no problem. I'm just thankful that cooler heads prevailed and realized that it was, in fact, a fair trade. Okay? Anyway, on that note, Brooklyn Baller gets his first victory of the season with a very close 13-point victory. We'll go on the Brooklyn Baller side first. 29 points from Mahomes, that's what you expect. Jamal Williams got hurt earlier in the game. The aforementioned Ramondre Stevenson, 15 points versus Miami. Nice effort. T. Higgins bounces back, 28 points. Nico Collins, 32 points. Tyler Conklin, 10 points. I'm thinking tight ends might get a little bump there without Rodgers. I'm thinking maybe a little security blanket for Zach Attack. Jordan Addison, a very exciting receiver out of Minnesota, 22 points. Ironically, they have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and yet they're 0-2 Minnesota. But Addison looks exciting, looks like a good player. Other MC has a love affair with Elijah Moore, 6 points. I don't know. I don't know what it is about them. Jets defense looking like one of the best in the league, and not on this week. -2 versus Dallas. 8th round Justin Tucker doing Justin Tucker things, 13 points. Browns coach takes a loss, -3. On the bench, some points here. Sky Moore, 16. Pickens, 33. Deontay Johnson's out for a few weeks on IR. Pickens is going to get his opportunity. Kirk Cousins, 45 spot versus Philly. And you know what? If Minnesota's defense can't stop anybody, Kirk Cousins, they're going to have to score, right? And they have the receivers to do it. Osborne, 12, Browns defense, 13, and the aforementioned Jaylen Warren with 12. Anyway, when you add up the starting lineup, 152 points, it was enough to get the victory. Our Chop had some bad luck. Matt had some bad luck this week, and I feel for him. Lamar Jackson bounces back with a nice 26-point effort. Nick Chubb, man, I think we all hope the best for Nick Chubb. That injury was nasty, and he's gone for the season. Only putting up 6 points before the injury. He was on his way to a big game, and I think the outcome might have been different if he didn't get hurt. Connor, 21 points with Arizona. A professional running back, catches the ball out of the backfield. He's a good player. Stephon Diggs, only 13. DK Metcalf, 13. Cole Kmet, average 7 points. That's what you're getting for tight ends these days. Olave, oh man, Olave had a shot. Olave had a couple of shots. He almost put Matt over the top in this game, if not for just barely stepping out of bounds on that long touchdown. Man, it was close. It was close. But Olave is an exciting player with a professional quarterback throwing to him. Mike Pittman Jr., 13 points. He's another one. He's unexciting, but he's the only one they're throwing to, really. Saints defense, 15, 6 from the kicker. Head coach wins. Add it all up, 139 points. Matt takes the loss, sitting in at 1-1, right in the middle of it. Other MC, 1-1. Early in the season, not much more to say about that. Let's look at the bench real quick. I'm sorry. Breece Hall with 0. Good foresight on Matt's part to sit Breece Hall. Playing Dallas, top defense. Didn't get the run this week, but it was a game script thing. Breece Hall is going to be a dangerous man in this league. Brian Robinson versus Denver, 28 points on the bench. That's got to hurt. That's got to hurt. Although I don't know who you would have sat here. I get sitting Brian Robinson, but that's a lot of points on the bench. Zay Flowers with 10, and then nothing else to speak of over here. So 1-1, both these teams in the thick of it, and let's see where we go from here. Next, Polish Powers, Errol, taking on the Polar Bears, Rick Penner, in what ended up being a close one, 160, 143. Let's see what we got on Errol's side. Tua Tagovailoa, feast or famine. 12 points on this particular game versus New England. I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's take a look real quick if there would have been other options. Deshaun Watson versus Pittsburgh. No, I would have played Tua also. Look, Tua is one of those players that is capable of putting up 50, 60 points in any given week. It just is the way it is. New England's a tough matchup, though. Saquon Barkley, 26 points. Another big injury on the week. Saquon Barkley. That looked kind of bad. Turns out maybe he won't miss as much time, right? Maybe 2-3 weeks, they're saying, with a sprained ankle. Probably, very likely won't play this week for San Francisco, and that's probably to his benefit. But 26 points before going out, so he got the full game from him, did pretty nice. Travis Etienne, only 6 points versus Kansas City. Garrett Wilson, 22. Keenan Allen, 36. Hockenson, 25. Scary Terry, 16. That's the kind of production you need to win in this league. And those are some nice points. Anytime you can get north of 20 or almost 20 for your pass catchers, that's pretty damn good. Pacheco only 8. Again, he's going to be a guy that is exciting to watch, but there's going to be games like this where he just, there's just, I don't even want to say there's a lot of mouths to feed, but there's, other than Kelsey, there's no one else really to rely on regular, you know what I mean? So there's going to be maybe different productive players outside of Kelsey on any given week, and this wasn't Pacheco's week. 5 points from your D, 7 from your kicker, head coach loss. On the Polar Bear side, Justin Fields. This guy is infuriating. It's Justin Fields. I watched him last year run for 50 and 60-yard touchdowns like every other play. And this year, he just, I don't know. He's not running as much. I'm not really sure. Still a dangerous player, but the Bears do not look good right now. DeAndre Swift may have taken the stranglehold of the starting job in Philly with a 31-point effort, proving that if you get injured, your job can be taken because Kenneth Gainwell didn't play in this game. Bijan, 25 points. If you remember, Tyler Algier only had 4. So I think that shows, who's the back to have in Atlanta. It's definitely Bijan. 25 points looks very exciting. Could be a generational talent. I really just wasn't a fan of Bijan because I thought he was getting drafted too early without any, got to prove it first. Well, he's proven it. Devontae Adams, 20 points. DJ Moore, 21. Only 3 points from Kyle Pitts. This guy is probably one of the most infuriating players in the game because he's so freaking gifted, but he plays in a system that won't use him. Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 points, another exciting player. I think his usage is going to pick up as the year goes on. Gets you 11 without Montgomery, 11 points, this week. Dameon Pierce, only 5 points, very disappointing versus Indy. Broncos D gets a point, 11 from your kicker, and a head coach win. Add it all up, you got 160 to 143. Let's just take a look real quick at the bench. Cooper, 16. Very surprising because he usually doesn't produce on the road, but he had a good game. Drake London picked the wrong Atlanta receiver to roll with this week, 18 points. Marvin Mims, 32 points. Very exciting player. But going to be hard to know when you can count on him week to week. All right, Polish Powers 1-1. Polar Bears 0-2. A lot of season left to play. Moving on, last game, the Chosen Ones 0-2. Taking on Moro's Vikings, 114-137. 23-point difference. This one, I don't know, man. Is it time to worry about the Bengals? Joe Burrow, 17. Mixon, 12. Jamar Chase, 8. That's not what you want to see from your trifecta, what's supposed to be a great offensive team. Playing, yes, a tough divisional opponent with Baltimore this year, and look out. Might be time to worry in Cincinnati. They're 0-2 and 0-2 in the division. Not pretty. Rachaad White's trying to make me eat my words. Put up 21 points this week. Very nice versus Chicago. Brandon Ayuk, 7 points. Playing injured. Injured his shoulder earlier in the game. Believe continued to play and everything, but didn't have it on this day. Darren Waller, 13 points. I think this is a guy that, he's a talented tight end. He is. If he stays healthy, he's going to get you points. 13 points is nothing to sneeze at in the tight end position. Miles Sanders, 7 points. Underwhelming versus a very tough New Orleans defense. Jerry Jeudy, only 5. Russell Wilson had 40-something points. Jerry Jeudy only got a small piece of that pie. 49ers defense, only 5 points versus the upstart Rams. Folk with 11. And a big win from the Bills, getting max points from the head coach. Add it all up, 114. What do we have on the bench? Geno Smith with 31. Jerome Ford ended up with 28 points, but remember, he only got in the game after Chubb got hurt. Ended up playing real nice after that. Tutu Atwell, 14. Shaheed with 11. On Moro's side, Jalen Hurts, 28 points versus Minnesota, right on the projected number. Very underwhelming. Madison, Herbert, Brown, 4, 6, and 6, respectively. 21 points from Debo, the Swiss Army knife out in San Francisco. Travis Kelce scores in his gallant return and looks good doing it. The surprise of the day for me is Zach Moss, 19 points. Where did he come from? Nobody likes Zach Moss. Guy broke his arm, comes back. He played well, and he might have a role in this team, especially look to see what happens with Taylor moving forward. The newly acquired Justice Hill, I traded Hill tomorrow earlier in the week to get Kenny Walker's handcuff, and Hill turned out 8 points on this particular week. Still remains to be seen who shakes out in Baltimore from a running back position. Bills points 14, Elliott 14, head coach win. On the bench, he had the foresight to bench DeAndre Hopkins. Very good move, only 8 points, even though that game could have been a little more high scoring. Akers, it was reported prior to the game that Akers was going to be a healthy scratch. The writing is on the wall. Akers is probably going to get released or traded. But if you remember, we said that last year too, and then he ended up being like a top 8 running back for the last, 6 games or 5 games of the season. I don't know what the hell's going on in there, but Akers is a headache, so we'll see what happens. Richardson with 17 points, got a little banged up. A running quarterback, I hope he's not injury prone because he is fun to watch. And then Adam Thielen, 20 points in a nice bounce back game after a rough week one. And then Zach Ertz with 11. Add it all up, you have a 137-114 victory for Morrow's Vikings. Chosen one struggling at 0-2. Morrow's 2-0. And little preview, Morrow and the Goodfellas tangle in week 3. 2 undefeated teams. We'll touch on that another time. So there you have it, guys. There's your week 2 wrap up. We had injuries. We had some big point totals. We had some surprises. And the NFL, man, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So good luck, everybody, in the weeks to come. On that note, it's time for me to get out of here. We'll have a little week 3 preview as soon as we can, and I will try to get together the little roundtable talk. Maybe tonight, we'll see. If not, maybe tomorrow. We'll see what we can do. All right? On that note, this has been the original MC for the OMC show. Thrilled to be back in the box and talking football with you. Week 2 results in the hop. Keep it going. All right, gentlemen. Have a good rest of your week. All right, gentlemen.